based on your work with Dr. Rose, and you've you've gone to pitch stock, you've had high level conversations with people who kind of are on the same path. Like let's know more, let's understand, and let's develop a plan. How do you see pitching kind of evolving as more information is being gathered on pitching?
Well, I think first and foremost, we're all going to start to get on somewhat of a same page, or hell, maybe even just the same book right now. Like we
Yeah.
have in softball pitching, like there's a lot of different ways to do it. And if you had the luxury of like being a little human drone and just flying over all the little lessons that are happening across the country and all the different coaches that are teaching, there's like a bazillion different ways that people are teaching how to pitch. Like there's so much variety in it. So I think the first thing that'll evolve is like, let's all start to get on the same page using the same language and understanding like, okay, something as simple as what does open mean? What does closed? Because in softball, open and closed terminology is opposite of open and closed in like a golf swing, for example. And so that's confusing to people, right? So like understanding when we say things like leg drive, what does that mean? So getting a common term going on, and then just a really good understanding of what's really important, because there is style. Like everybody can have their own style. You can swing and it looks very different than, the next person in your lineup, but some of the foundational and really important things that are happening are the same between you guys. There's benchmarks in a swing, but the style component of it can be very different. Like where do you start? High, low, where's your bat angle, like how far is your shot? A lot of different style components. That's why we see different, hitters. But when we get to the nuts and bolts of it, like what is really important is that happening the same. And so I think we're going to be able to take the data and the information and start saying, here's what's really important. Like here's, or as Greg Rose will say and talk about, like, here's what we don't want to do. This is for sure what we don't want to have happen, and that's kind of how he develops his process is we probably can agree on what shouldn't happen before we agree on what should happen. But we need to start like getting down to the nuts and bolts of it. And these things are really important. And then from there, have your style. Maybe your pitchers go overhead or, like obviously people that come from a hitting coach or a pitching coach are going to have similar styles because of the language and that person's influence. But like right now, I don't think we're emphasizing the important factors on it,
Mm-hmm.
mechanics diatribe on that, but and then getting our kids to understand what's really important. And then when they understand that, okay, let's explore outside of that. You have that foundation. Now let's just have some fun and see where it goes uniquely. So I think softball pitching is probably going to change the most. Because it has the most to change, because it has the least amount of structure of, any of our athletes. I mean, in truth to be told, like baseball has a measuring board, like Major League Baseball, and the money that's involved in it and the contracts that are out will always kind of weed out the crazy, right? Like
Yeah.
people want to teach some weird things. Like if you blow a guy's elbow out at 16, you're going to lose, from the top down. So it kind of streamlines it a little. And we're starting to get more money in our sport and, more money crossing hands and a little bit more power and stuff. But because softball never had a Major League Baseball equivalent pro league, we have the NPF and that's great. But we never had like $1 million of contract signing. It gave freedom to a lot of coaches to kind of just make things up or, I'm a pitching coach because my daughter pitched. And not that that's not a valid because you could still be a really good pitching coach that way. But just because she did it and I didn't take time to research it or learn some important factors of it, I just started picking up local kids and just saying things to them that I told my daughter. I mean, you and I both know some people are just naturally good. Like, just like, I don't know that, Kat Oshman's dad is brilliant, by the way, but I don't know that he can go teach another kid how to be Kat.
Yeah.
Like, there's some things we're trying to figure out what makes her good, but I mean, she was just, kind of naturally good. So we have a lot of that. We have a lot of, I know this person or I coach this person. And so therefore I do lessons and parents, maybe don't know how to ask the right questions or what questions to ask, and they sign up and they start coaching kids, and then kids start pitching at like 8 years old, and naturally there will be growth, because when you're 8 and you're 70 pounds, and then when you're 14 and you're 130 pounds, like you're gonna throw the ball harder between 8 and 14. I mean, you just are, like, mass is on your side, right? So you'll continue to get better, just biology, right? And hitters are terrible at 8U. No offense to the 8U, but I mean, hitting is a really hard skill, and like hand-eye coordination. So
Yeah.
pitchers have a lot of early at 8, 10, 12U, because hitters aren't as refined and good. Their hand-eye coordination is still developing. That's a really hard skill. I think it's the hardest skill in sport to do, right? So that the idea that a 9-year-old is going to execute it perfect time is probably silly. So it's always in the pitcher's favor, right? And then the pitcher gets more mass, they get a little bit naturally stronger. And so it kind of gives value to some of these pitching coaches out there that they're good at what they do. And I'm like, well, that was really just biology and competition. So if we start maybe asking, like having a common language, and we start having an idea of what's really important now, and we get that information out, in the community, in the college coaches first, and the travel ball coaches, and then maybe down even to the parents. Now as a parent, I know what questions to ask. I should be asking somebody who's going to work with my kid, where did you get like your coaching experience from, or where do you pull your philosophy from, or can you tell me some of your mentors or whatever before I sign up to pay your person $50 to $60 a half an hour, So I think that's going to change. I think in a few years' time, parents are going to be more educated on what to ask, and that'll weed out some of those coaches that haven't taken the time to look at things through a different lens and understand the important elements of it. Sorry, that was kind of long-winded, but
no, I loved the last point that you brought up is because there's a lack of, maybe not a lack of, it's not knowing how to ask the questions of the instructors, and like the lack of knowledge and experience in softball is, parents get taken advantage of because we have this system that hasn't built in this kind of, credibility in terms of how they train their athletes and how they develop the pitchers. It's there's some pitching coaches out there that kind of take advantage of that. And I hope that starts to end, because you and I have had this discussion before too. Like there are great pitchers out there, but there should be more. I'm just saying that there should be the equivalent of great hitters that we see in the sport of softball. There should be an equal amount in the pitching department.
If we look at what baseball has done over 20 years, right? If you look at bullpen pitchers over the 20 years ago, touching the low 90s was impressive, right? If we look at and maybe 25, 30 years ago, right? Okay, 90, 95, woo, but you look at bullpens today in Major League Baseball, it's 95 to 104, right? And oftentimes it's more 97, 98, 99.
Yeah.
And we have frequency of 100-mile-an-hour arms in Major League Baseball is significantly higher than what it was in the 80s and the 90s and probably even the early 2000s, right? In softball, we've had 70. We had 70 in the 80s with early 90s maybe, Michelle Granger and Michelle Smith. We had that. We've had 70 for a while now. And yes, Ueno from Japan throws 72 and Monica throws 72, but why aren't we throwing 75?
Yeah.
Why push that envelope? We have more athletes pitching than ever before. We have more athletes being coached than ever before. We have access to a lot more information, a lot more training principles. And if we look at the collective majority of pitching, and I think if we had the ability to look at data from the early 90s and look at data from today, I think the average velocity is down. I think
pitching
is hard. And from just experience angle, you faced 68 consistently in college.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? And that's always my question, right? You know, like, we could talk about like the great pitchers, and we could say, well, she was great even though she did this. I'm like, well, maybe she could have been. You know, maybe there's something that might change, and she can throw 75. Right? Like, why are we looking at it and saying, well, they were great anyway? Yeah, no, I'm not taking their greatness away, but we have done better. Baseball figured out. Basketball, guys jump higher, they run faster. Football, they hit harder, they throw the ball longer, like they run faster. Like, if you look at combine measurements from 20 years ago to today,
not even close.
The records fall every year, right? Like, why is our sport, like hitting, it's like we're getting so much better. Like, hitting is phenomenal now, but like, why is pitching not? Like,
this is where you come in.
Right, yeah. So that's always in the back of my mind. Why can't we be better? Like,
there you go. Start the movement.
Yeah, we try. One day at a time.